Good morning. It's lovely to see you all this morning, and welcome to our Sunday Dharma service. Today we have our local community. Thank you for coming and joining us, as well as 21 retreat participants that are here. And so we're happy to practice together along with our online community. So welcome. Each retreat offers us a different learning, and we all take something away from when you go on retreat. And this one reminded me of sincerity and how the depth of our sincerity, the effect of that on our lives and our practice. So my body may be tired, but my heart is full. So let us, with our whole hearts and minds, stand for bowing practice. Please bring your palms together in front of your chest. And we will make 4 bows to Dharmakaya Buddha, fourfold grace, 4 standing bows. We bow in gratitude to the grace of heaven and earth, honoring the infinite beneficence of nature and the universe. We bow in gratitude to the grace of parents, honoring the parents that gave birth to us, those that raised us, our teachers, ancestors, and all of those who have supported and guided our lives. We bow in gratitude to the grace of fellow beings, honoring and recognizing the truth of interconnectedness. And we bow in gratitude to the grace of laws, laws that guide us, protect us, and promote justice. Now please take a moment to, with your open hearts and beautiful smiles, bow to your neighbor Buddhas and say good morning. And we will start our practice today with seated meditation, and also hear a Dharma talk by Reverend Grace called Stillness in Action, Trusting the One Circle. And we'll be guided by Jeff in the method of seated meditation.
The method of sitting meditation is simple and easy. Sit comfortably on the floor or in a chair. Breathe in, grab all your attention, and breathe it out. Open up your chest and heart. Stretch up tall and align your spine from your neck to your tailbone. Relax your shoulders and arms, then allow your hands to rest on your knees. Bring your attention to your breath. As you exhale, release all mental and physical tension. Invite your attention to abide in your chi energy field, which is called Danjan. This is located about 2 inches below your navel and is the power center for your breathing. Open your eyes and gaze downward over the end of your nose and to the floor. Keep your mouth closed and allow the tip of your tongue to rest gently against the roof of your mouth. When your mind is concentrated and calm, pure and clear saliva may gather in the mouth. You may swallow it. Relax your facial muscles and notice your gentle smile. If your face or body begins to itch, do not scratch. This is just a sign of the energy circulating in your body. Simply note the itching and let it pass. If your legs ache unbearably, you may change position very slowly and quietly so that you maintain a calm stillness and do not interrupt others. When thoughts arise in your mind, do not be discouraged or disturbed by them. Simply focus on your breathing without reacting to or playing with those thoughts. Recognize them as thoughts. They will disappear by themselves. And remember, keep bringing your awareness back to your Danjan breathing center. If you continue practicing meditation for a long period of time, you will rest in the realm of samadhi, deep meditation, in which the mind is calm, concentrated, perfectly focused, and at peace, with no distinction between self and others, time and place. We are grateful to sit quietly together, finding the still point within. May we be here now, aware of our ever calm and alert spirit.
Now our meditation practice will continue with sutra chanting. So please open your booklets to pages 4 and 5 to chant the Ilwon Song Vow and the Heart Sutra by Reverend Ginger.
Ilwon Song Vow. Ilwon is the realm of samadhi, beyond words and speech, the gateway of birth and death, transcending being and knowing, the origin of heaven and earth, parents, fellow beings, and laws, the true nature of all Buddhas, enlightened masters, unenlightened people, and sentient beings, one manifests as both permanence and impermanence, used as permanence, one unfolds into an infinite word that is ever abiding, spontaneous, just as it is viewed as impermanence, one unfolds into infinite words through the cycle of formation, duration, decay, and extinction of the universe, and the birth, aging, illness, and death of all beings, according to how we use our minds and bodies. In the four forms of birth, we transform through the 6 realms of existence, progressing or regressing with grace, arising from harm or harm from grace. Therefore, we unawakened beings vow to practice wholeheartedly, modeling ourselves after Ilwon Song, the Dharma, by cultivating our minds and bodies, deeply knowing human affairs and universal principles thoroughly, and using our minds and bodies skillfully, progressing rather than regressing, with grace of inverse rather than harm, until we attain the great empowerment of Ilwon and become one with the nature of Ilwon. Heart Sutra. The Bodhisattva of great compassion, when deeply practiced, Prajnaparamita, realized that all 5 aggregates are empty, and thus became free from all suffering and distress. So Shariputra form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. The same is true of sensations, perceptions, impulses, consciousness. So Shariputra, all dharmas are empty. They do not appear or disappear, are not tainted or pure, do not increase or decrease. In emptiness, no form, no sensations, no perceptions, no impulses, no consciousness, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object, no mind, no realm of eye, nose, tongue, body, or mind, consciousness, no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance. enlightenment, their fruit. Prajnaparamita is the great mantra, is the great enlightening mantra, is the unsurpassed, unequaled mantra, which is able to eliminate all suffering. This is true, not false, so proclaim the Prajnaparamita mantra, which says, gone, beyond, far beyond, the awakened, gate, parasangate, bodhisvaha, gate, parasangate, bodhisvaha, gate, parasangate, bodhisvaha.
Let's take a moment to stretch our bodies, taking a deep breath. Raise up. Hold the arms and reach to the ceiling. And release. Let's bring your shoulders up, all the way up to the ears. And drop. And then bring your right ear to your right shoulder, or vice versa. And the opposite way. Let's just roll the head in one direction. And the opposite way. And you can twist to one side, twist the spine, and look over the shoulder. Twist the other way. Don't forget to breathe. And come back to center. And now you can release your legs and make yourselves comfortable. I'd like to introduce Reverend Grace Song. She is from the Wan Institute of Graduate Studies, and here, one of the main teachers for our retreat. And she's giving a talk on stillness in action, trusting the one circle. Please bring your palms together to welcome her.
So what allows a person to remain steady when everything around them is shaking? There's a story in the scripture, you may have heard this before, when founding master Sotasan was traveling by boat when the weather suddenly turned and the wind grew fierce and the waves kept getting higher, and before long the boat was being tossed violently side to side, and everybody on board was terrified. People were crying, some were seasick and vomiting, and before long, fear spread among everyone until panic itself became the greatest force on the boat. And in the midst of all of this, Sotasan remained calm. He looked at those around him and he encouraged them to steady their minds. And rather than surrender to fear, he urged everyone to gather themselves. On its surface, this is a simple story about a storm at sea. But what I want to suggest is that every one of us, I'd like to think, has been on that boat. And perhaps your storm did not come as wind and waves. Perhaps it came as a diagnosis you weren't prepared to hear, or the loss of someone dear to you. Perhaps it was uncertainty about money, the ending of a relationship, fear about what's coming. The question then is not whether storms will arrive. They will arrive. The real question is what happens to our mind when they do. So notice what happened on the boat. The passengers, what happens, the outer storm became an inner one. And their fear moved from person to person until panic itself became the greater danger, greater in some ways than the waves. And Sutta-san was in the very same storm, right? The same wind, the same uncertainty, the same waves. But his mind did not become another storm layered on top of the first. Instead, he returned everyone's attention to the one thing that remained within their power, the condition of their own mind. So even when we can't choose our circumstances, we can still choose how to meet them. But no one makes that choice by chance. When the storm comes, we don't suddenly just become calm, compassionate, or wise. We fall back on whatever we have practiced most. And this is why our mind training matters. Sutta-san was calm on that boat because he had spent years training his mind in both action and rest. His composure was the fruit of countless moments of cultivation, inquiry, and wise choice. And his calm began to affect everyone else on that boat. We often speak of panic as contagious, but calm is also contagious. You may have noticed this in your life. When that one person remains grounded in the middle of a crisis, the people around them often begin, without quite realizing it, to breathe a little more easily. So his greatest gift that day was not controlling the weather, but becoming that anchor in the midst of uncertainty. And this reminds me of something that the Reverend Dr. Zina Jack once said. She said that each of us carries a kind of spiritual fragrance. We bring it with us wherever we go, and long after we left a room, traces of it remain. So some leave behind the fragrance of peace, others leave behind anxiety, some leave encouragement, others resentment. None of us moves through the world without some trace remaining behind us. So I'd like you to consider, what fragrance does your mind leave behind? When people encounter you, do they leave feeling more hopeful, more spacious, more truly seen, or more anxious than before they arrived? Every genuine encounter leaves an imprint. And Sutta-san left behind the fragrance of groundedness. His stillness gave others permission to become still themselves. So it's one thing to remain calm during a storm at sea, but could that same stillness withstand the storms of history? Many of you may not know this, but I think it's a miracle that One Buddhism exists to this day, considering it was born during one of the most darkest periods in Korea's history. Japan had occupied the country. The Korean language, culture, religious life were tightly controlled. Any independent religious movement was regarded with suspicion. They were called pseudo-religions. So to avoid unwanted attention, the early One Buddhist community called itself by a different name. It wasn't originally One Buddhism. We were called the Society for the Study of the Buddha Dharma. Outwardly, it resembled an ordinary study group. Inwardly, something significant was taking root. But it was during this period that the Japanese authorities sent a specialist investigator. They sent a spy to this community. It was a Korean police officer working for the Japanese colonial police force, and his name was Hwang Kabong, and he spoke Korean and Japanese. And his orders were very straightforward. They said, go undercover, infiltrate the Society for the Study of the Buddha Dharma, which is now One Buddhism, and find grounds to dissolve it. Find out, are there any scandalous relationships between men and women? any financial corruption, find that out. And he was promised a promotion and a cut of whatever assets the government would seize. So he was to dress as a civilian, blend in with the members, and report back to the Japanese officials. So that's what he did. He set up an office within the community. He introduced himself to founding Master Sotaesan. He said, I want to study Buddhism. So Sotaesan welcomed him without hesitation, gave him a student's robes. And one of Sotaesan's disciples later asked whether it was wise to trust this officer Huang. And Sotaesan's answer was simple. Your ideas and mine are different. What reason would I have for not inspiring him and helping him gain deliverance? So Officer Huang began his mission of investigating the spiritual community. So what would he do? He would climb walls, kind of eavesdrop on all the meetings. He would observe the community activities. And Sotaesan once said to him, he said, our community is here with the purpose of contributing to society. If it turns into something harmful to society, I will pack my bags and leave today. So go ahead and investigate thoroughly. So that's what he did. So Officer Huang, he was very critical in the beginning, right? So he would peruse the scriptures at that time, and he would remark, this is so insignificant. He's like, why would they come to learn this, right? It's plain language, didn't seem very spiritual. And slowly, something unexpected began to happen. The man sent to destroy, in some ways, the community found himself being transformed by it. By the summer retreat of 1937, Huang Kabong shaved his head. He's entered the meditation hall to practice alongside everyone else. And it was here that Sotaesan gave him his Dharma name. He said, you are Ichon, two heavens. And the name carried two meanings. First, it would signify liberation. So though it was still the colonial era, he's saying a new world was coming. So interpreted more broadly, it pointed to the passing of the former heaven and the arrival of the later heaven. So he was foreshadowing the liberation from Japanese rule. But the name also served another purpose, because by calling him Huang Ichon, there was no longer any need to address him by the name Officer Huang. The Dharma name worked as a spiritual entry and as a way of setting aside his police identity without ever drawing attention to it. What followed over the next several years was a relationship that defied everything Huang had been sent there to find. He started to form a very close relationship with Master Sotaesan because Sotaesan treated him as a true disciple. Sotaesan started personally teaching him the Confucian Great Learning and offered private guidance during Dharma services. And at first, Huang Ichon would report his activities to the Japanese officials. But as time passed, he would consult with Sotaesan first to make sure that what he reported was accurate, and then he would report it to the Japanese officials. And then him and Sotaesan started to have these more deep conversations about practice and the Sangha. One day, Huang Ichon was sitting in the dining hall just watching the community members having a meal, and he marveled at how they cared so much for one another, because they were living during a time where food was scarce. They were very poor. There wasn't enough food for everybody. And so many of them would just eat a little bit of rice, and if there were any side dishes, they would try to give it to others. So Huang Ichon said to Sotaesan, he said, Master Sotaesan, you have such a, one great talent. And Sotaesan asked, what talent do I have? Where did you find such well-behaved people to gather together? Such orderly, well-behaved behavior, especially during meal times. That's such a rare sight during this time of poverty. What skill did you have to assemble such people? And Sotaesan said, Ichon, you don't know a thing. He said, they were not originally such well-behaved people. He said, practice broke them apart with a chisel and hammer and rebuilt them. So Hwang Yi-chun continued to attend all the retreats. And in 1939, only 4 years after arriving, he asked Master Sotaesan, can I give a lecture too? Because at that time, in Won Buddhism, we have lecture practice. You're giving a topic to contemplate and then give a lecture in front of the audience. Well, he saw this many times, and so he said, I want to give a lecture too. And the records show he was excellent. The infiltrator had become a student, and the teacher had never once treated him as anything else. And then in 1940, Sotaesan took Hwang aside over dinner, not for a Dharma lesson, but for something more personal. He encouraged him to think about his future. He said, you need to settle down. You need to raise your children well. You need to build something that will last. And he suggested, why don't you start an orchard? And Hwang pushed back. He said, I have no land, I have no money. How could someone with nothing accomplish anything through desire alone? And Sotaesan replied, do not think that only money makes things happen. If the community supports you, things naturally come together. And they did. Through the goodwill of those around him, he acquired land on credit, he secured loans, and eventually established a working orchard, the foundation of his family's stability. So Sotaesan had guided him not only spiritually, but practically. And Hwang Yi-chun later wrote at the end of his memoir, he said, it is impossible to fully express in writing the founding master's virtue and character, but the fact that he personally guided me, cared about my personal affairs and future, all of this feels like a profound karmic bond, and the weight of his grace is beyond all record. By the time of Sotaesan's death, Hwang Yi-chun was one of the last people to see him pass. But before his passing, Hwang Yi-chun did once ask Sotaesan, he said, Master, since you too have a physical body, you will pass away someday. Will this society for the study of the Buddha Dharma continue as it is after you have passed on? And Sotaesan replied, of course. Most religious organizations believe in the religious founder as an individual. So when that person dies, the organization usually collapses. But this research society does not believe in me as an individual, but believes in the correct teachings. So even after I die, these teachings will be eternally transmitted. And after saying this, he immediately called Chusan Songdosong, one of his disciples, to the office. And right then he joyfully said, okay, Article 3 of the Essentials of Practice, believe not just in the person alone, but in the Dharma. Make that Article 3. After Korea's liberation, Hwang resigned from the police and formally entered the Won Buddhist order. 2 of his children ordained as Won Buddhist Kyomunim. And in his later years, he traveled to temples across the country, sharing memories of Sotaesan. I believe Sotaesan's example of stillness in action is one of the reasons we're able to sit in this meditation hall today. Had Sotaesan responded with fear instead of wisdom, suspicion instead of compassion, this community might never have survived. When the mind is still, the heart doesn't close. You can see even an infiltrator as a Buddha. You can see beyond the crisis of the moment to what is possible. Sotaesan trusted that this storm would pass, and with wisdom and compassion, he led the way. So several of Hwang Yi-chun's children are still alive today. And a few months ago, I had the chance to meet his youngest daughter. She's ordained one Buddhist Kyomunim, now retired. And I asked her, I said, come on, be honest. Did your dad force you to become an ordained clergy? And she laughed. She goes, no, this is completely my own decision. And then I asked her another question. I said, did your father ever tell you stories about Sote-san? And she smiled and she said, I do remember one story he shared. And she told me that her father had studied the Analects with Sote-san, and they came across this teaching. It says, do not transfer anger. And her father at first thought, well, of course, that sounds obvious. But then he tried to practice it. It was so difficult, right? You're angry with this person, that anger can transfer to this person. So her father became very curious. He started saying, does Master Sote-san practice this? I'm going to watch. So he started to observe Master Sote-san. Does Master Sote-san transfer anger? So one day he watched Sote-san give some there was one group of disciples that did something very wrong for the community. So he was scolding them. And then only moments later, he walked over to speak with another group of disciples. And so Huang expected to see the same stern expression on his face, but there wasn't a trace of it. The correction had ended, so had the anger. And so Huang later admitted, again, I tried to practice this myself, but I couldn't do it. But he said, that's why we practice. Not because stillness comes naturally, but because one day we hope someone else might say the same thing about us. There wasn't a trace of it. So perhaps that's the real question the story leaves us with. When our own storms come, what kind of person will they reveal? Will they reveal a mind that is carried away by overcharged emotions, or one that has learned again and again to return to that circle? And that's what Sote-san showed us. Remaining calm in the storm, seeing a future disciple where others saw an infiltrator, embodying the teaching, do not transfer anger. And again, that mind isn't formed overnight. It is cultivated in ordinary moments when we pause before reacting, take one conscious breath, let go of resentment, and return and shine the light inwards to our original nature. So these moments may seem small, but one day you'll discover that you were never simply preparing for the storm. The storm was revealing what you had been preparing all along. So perhaps that's the real purpose of our practice. To become people whose minds remain still, whose hearts remain open, and whose presence becomes an anchor for others. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Grace. It was so inspiring. She said, practice, Master Sote-san said, practice broke them apart with a chisel and rebuilt them. And that's still true here today. So let us now recite the essential dharmas of daily practice, led by Maureen on page 6.
Essential dharmas of daily practice. 1. The mind is originally free from disturbance, but disturbances arise in response to sensory conditions. Let us restore the equanimity of our true nature by letting go of disturbances. 2. The mind is originally free from delusion, but delusions arise in response to sensory conditions. Let us restore the wisdom of our true nature by letting go of delusions. 3. The mind is originally free from wrongdoing, but wrongdoings arise in response to sensory conditions. Let us restore the precepts of our true nature by letting go of wrongdoings. 4. Let us replace disbelief, greed, laziness, and ignorance with belief, zeal, questioning, and dedication. 5. Let us turn resentment into gratitude. 6. Let us turn dependency into self-reliance. 7. Let us turn reluctance to learn into willingness to learn well. 8. Let us turn reluctance to teach into willingness to teach well. 9. Let us turn lack of public spirit into eagerness to serve the good of all.
I have a few announcements to make. So we have a few retreats coming up. And this is the flyer for the Labor Day weekend retreat called The Sky Within. And you can see the retreats online, of course, September 4th through September 7th. And then we also have one of our Kyoharan members, one of our members, Michael Hodgkins, is also running a retreat here called Honey Grief. And this is a ritual-centered grief retreat. And this starts August 21st through the 23rd, and the flyers are in the foyer. And next week, on the 9th, next Sunday, we have our circle gatherings. So we'll have women's circle and also men's circle. So please join us for that. And now open your booklets to page 9 to sing the morning prayer song. Kaya Buddha, pour forth grace. I begin a new day with your presence. Today, full of health and with peace of mind, may I walk along the path of the Buddha. Dharma Kaya Buddha, pour forth grace. I begin a new day with your grace. Today, gratefully and with gentle words, may I live in harmony with all those I meet. Dharma Kaya Buddha, pour forth grace. I begin a new day with compassion. Today, making the world a more loving place. May I do all that I can for one world. Whether the skies are blue or the storms rage, may you be still and may your hearts never close. Have a lovely day, and we will see you next week.